The ballast's rebirth, the $2 million dress, and the $5 million payback. Impactful opening. Hello everyone, and welcome back to this corner of truly breathtaking stories. Before we dive into this whirlwind of luxury, secrets, and a vengeance as sweet as it is unexpected, I have a deal for you. Subscribe to our channel right now and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our epic narratives. Your support is the spark that ignites every one of our stories. Imagine this. We are in the heart of Miami, on the exclusive South Beach, where fortunes are forged under the Florida sun and reputations can crumble as fast as a sandcastle. In a single night, the Zenith Gala. Tech for Kids Health was the social pinnacle of the season. All eyes were on 45-year-old tech mogul Vincent Sterling and his new fiancée. Serena Hayes, a woman barely half his age, with diamonds that glittered as brightly as her ambition. He flaunted her like a trophy, a public declaration that his past, his quiet, modest ex-wife, Anya, was nothing more than a forgotten footnote. But in a world of meticulously curated perfection, a single moment can unravel everything. A gasp, a sudden silence, every head turning towards the grand entrance. Because the footnote just walked in, and she was about to rewrite the entire story. The Grand Hall, a king's reign, the grand ballroom of the Breakers Resort was a testament to unbridled luxury. Light from 3 colossal crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, fractured into a million shimmering pieces, dancing over the gilded cornices and the sea of guests clad in high fashion. The air, dense with the scent of gardenia and expensive perfumes, vibrated with the carefully modulated murmur of the city's elite. This was the Zenith Gala, an event where compassion was currency and social status the ultimate prize. And tonight, Vincent Sterling was winning. He stood near the imposing marble staircase, one hand possessively on his fiancée's small back, the other holding a flute of Dom Perignon. Vincent, at 45, was a force of nature. His company, Sterling Innovations, had revolutionized cybersecurity, making him a multi-billionaire before 40. He had a predator's smile, sharp and shrewd, and eyes the color of cold steel that missed nothing. He had built his empire on relentless acquisitions and an infallible instinct for detecting weakness. His fiancée, Serena Hayes, was 24, a former brand strategist whose main brand appeared to be herself. Her dress was fire engine red, a bold, unforgiving Alexander McQueen cinched around a figure sculpted by personal trainers and a disciplined diet of kale and ambition. A shocking yellow diamond necklace, a recent gift from Vincent, blazed at her throat. She left a trail of laughter that was too loud, too rehearsed, designed to draw every eye. "Honey," she purred, tilting her head so the light caught the facets of her earrings. "Robert Castillo from Tech Today is looking at me again. He must be desperate for a quote about the merger." Vincent squeezed her waist gently. "Let him be desperate. Tonight is about us." And, of course, he added with a magnanimous gesture, "The children." His gaze swept the room with an air of supreme possession. He saw the subtle gestures of deference, the envious glances, the way people positioned themselves to catch his attention. This was his world, a kingdom he had built from scratch, and every piece of it was a reflection of his power, especially the woman at his side. Serena was everything his ex-wife Anya had not been. She was vibrant, sexually confident, and completely in love with the public stage. Anya. The name surfaced in his mind like an inconvenient, irritating ghost. He hadn't thought of her in months, not truly. Their divorce had been finalized a year ago, a clean, surgical cut. He had been generous, of course. His lawyers had made sure the world knew how generous he had been. He'd given her the quiet suburban house they once shared, and a settlement that to anyone else would seem immense. To him, it was a rounding error, the cost of shedding dead weight. He remembered their last meeting in the lawyer's office. Anya had been so beige. Her sensible gray suit, her hair pulled back in a simple bun, her face pale and unmade up. She looked exhausted, a ghost haunting the edges of his vibrant new life. She hadn't fought him. She hadn't yelled, cried, or thrown things. She had simply sat there, hands folded in her lap, her silence more unnerving than any diatribe. "Is this what you want, Vincent?" she had asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It's what's necessary, Anya," he had replied, his tone clipped and final. "We've drifted apart. I am moving forward. You are not." The unspoken words hung in the air. You are not young enough, not exciting enough, not beautiful enough. You are the starter wife, the cocoon I had to shed to become the butterfly. He had convinced himself it was true. She had been the quiet librarian's daughter he met in college, the constant supporting force while he was a chaotic storm of ambition. She had managed their home, supported his early projects with her small inheritance, and provided a quiet refuge from his boardroom battles. But refuges become prisons when you want to fly. "I still can't believe she had the nerve to try and keep the Rothkos," Serena suddenly said, jolting him out of his reverie. She was scrolling through her phone, a sneer curling her perfectly lined lips. "I saw the Sotheby's auction results. She sold them. Probably needed the money to fix the roof on that dreary little house." Vincent grunted. The two Mark Rothko paintings had been a point of contention. Anya had an innate eye for art, a skill he once found charming and had even monetized. She had bought the paintings years ago, long before their value skyrocketed. She had claimed they were a joint investment, bought with her family money. His lawyers had argued otherwise. In the end, as part of the settlement, she had been forced to sell one, and he had kept the other, the largest and most significant piece that now hung in the lobby of the Sterling Tower. "She doesn't appreciate what they represent," Vincent said dismissively. "To her, they were just colors on a canvas. To me, they represent vision, the foresight to acquire a masterpiece." He conveniently forgot that it was Anya who had spent hours in a dusty gallery, convincing a skeptical dealer that she, a young woman in a plain coat, understood the artist's soul. The orchestra began a soft waltz. A few couples drifted onto the dance floor. The atmosphere was one of serene, self-congratulatory elegance. Vincent felt a surge of triumph. Everything was perfect. He had the business world under control, the most talked about woman in Miami on his arm, and the ghost of his past was exactly where she belonged. In the past. Forgotten. Irrelevant. It was precisely at that moment, as his smug satisfaction peaked, that the soft murmur of the ballroom began to change. It didn't start as a sound, but as a feeling, a subtle shift in the room's energy. Conversations near the grand entrance halted. Heads turned not with casual interest, but with a sharp, unified focus. The movement spread inward, a wave of silent curiosity propagating through the crowd. Serena noticed it first. "What is it? Did some celebrity arrive?" she asked, craning her neck. Vincent followed her gaze. A path was opening in the crowd, a silent aisle being carved through the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. Guests weren't just looking, they were gaping. Champagne flutes were held, forgotten halfway to lips. Even Robert Castillo from Tech Today had lowered his phone, his reporter instincts replaced by simple, unadulterated shock. And then he saw her. For a disorienting second, his brain refused to process the image. It was like watching a character from a black and white film, suddenly appear in vibrant, blinding technicolor. The woman standing at the top of the staircase was tall, serene, her posture radiating a quiet authority that seemed to command the very air around her. Her hair, which he remembered as simple brown, was now a rich, deep auburn, styled in elegant waves that fell over one shoulder. Her face was luminous, her features sculpted by a subtle, masterful hand, highlighting high cheekbones and the intelligent eyes he had once claimed to love. But it was the dress that was causing the collective paralysis. It wasn't just a dress. It was a work of art, a cascade of midnight blue silk organza and hand-embroidered platinum thread that seemed to have captured a piece of the cosmos. Thousands of tiny, meticulously placed diamonds and sapphires glittered in its folds, not with the showy fire of Serena's necklace, but with the deep, mysterious shimmer of a distant nebula. The gown flowed from a structured, cinched bodice to a train that swept the marble floor like liquid moonlight. It was a garment that spoke not of expense, but of legacy. It was stunning. It was magnificent. It was, Vincent's mind calculated with the speed of a trading algorithm, astronomically expensive, and the woman wearing it, the woman now descending the staircase with the poised grace of a queen, was his ex-wife, Dr. Anya Reed. The silence that fell over the Grand Astoria ballroom was profound. It was a heavy silence, dense with astonishment and disbelief. The orchestra, sensing the seismic shift in the room's atmosphere, stopped mid-note, the last violin string seeming to hang in the air like a question mark. All the power, all the attention, all the ambient energy that had been orbiting around Vincent and Serena moments before had been captured by a new, irresistible gravitational force at the top of the stairs. Anya descended. She did not rush. Every step was deliberate, her hand gliding lightly on the polished marble railing. Her expression was serene, a subtle, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. It was not a smile of triumph or malice. It was one of quiet confidence, of a woman perfectly at ease in her own skin, in her power. She was not looking at Vincent. Her gaze was directed forward, scanning the room with a calm, assessing look, as if she were merely a guest arriving at a party she knew she belonged to. The gown was the epicenter of the spectacle. Whispers finally began to break the silence, starting at the back and spreading forward like a storm. "My God, is that a Devereaux?" hissed a woman in a Chanel tweed jacket to her escort. "I thought he stopped designing. Julian Devereaux. No, it can't be. He hasn't done a private commission in 20 years. Look at the embroidery, the star pattern. That's his signature. That's not a dress. It's a museum piece." Julian Devereaux was a name whispered with the reverence reserved for deities or ghosts. The legendary couturier had been the favorite of royalty and old dynasties, before abruptly retiring at the peak of his fame, disgusted by the commercialism of modern fashion. He lived in monastic seclusion in a Scottish castle, rumored to occasionally create a piece for his own artistic satisfaction. Pieces that were never sold, only gifted or kept. Wearing a new Devereaux was not a matter of money. It was a matter of being deemed worthy by the master himself. And this gown was unmistakably new, a celestial masterpiece that made every other designer piece in the room look like a cheap imitation. Someone near the press area, a fast-rising young fashion blogger, was already furiously tapping on her phone. Sources say the dress has over 10,000 hand-set diamonds and sapphires from a private collection. Early estimates put it over $2 million, possibly more. The figure shot through the room via text messages and whispers, adding another layer of awe and confusion to the scene. $2 million, worn by Anya Reed, the forgotten ex-wife. Vincent felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. It was a feeling he despised, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Loss of control. He watched her, and it was like looking at a stranger. The Anya he had discarded was a creature of earth tones and comfortable fabrics. She preferred books to parties, quiet evenings to glittering galas. She would have considered a dress like this the height of absurd frivolity. This woman, this vision descending the stairs, was someone else entirely. She had been remade, forged in an unknown fire. Beside him, Serena was practically vibrating with fury. Her perfectly made-up face was a mask of incandescent rage, her knuckles white as she gripped her clutch. "What is she doing here?" she spat, her voice a venomous whisper. "And what in God's name is she wearing? Did she blow her entire settlement on one dress? How pathetic!" But the words sounded hollow even to Vincent. This wasn't pathetic. It was a declaration of war. A silent, elegant, devastatingly effective strike. Anya hadn't yelled or thrown a tantrum. She had simply arrived, and in doing so, had made Serena's ostentatious diamonds and fiery red dress look cheap and desperate. She had stolen the spotlight without uttering a single word. When Anya reached the bottom of the staircase, a collective breath released. She paused, and for the first time, her eyes shifted toward where Vincent and Serena stood. There was not a flicker of pain, not a hint of longing. Only a cold, distant gaze, the kind of acknowledgement one might give to a piece of furniture that has been relocated. Her gaze rested on him for a barely perceptible instant before moving to Serena, observing the McQueen gown and the canary diamonds with an almost clinical lack of interest. Then she gave a small, polite nod, a gesture of distant courtesy, and turned away. The spell broke. The room erupted into a cacophony of excited chatter. People were no longer looking at Vincent. They were looking at Anya, trying to catch her eye, trying to comprehend the impossible transformation. The most influential figures in the city, men and women Vincent had cultivated for years, were now gravitating toward his ex-wife. He watched in disbelief as Miguel Beaumont, the aged patriarch of a real estate dynasty, a man famously impermeable to social climbing, moved to greet her. He offered a slight bow of his head, a gesture of old-world respect. "Dr. Reed," Beaumont said, his voice echoing in the relative silence around them. "An unexpected pleasure. You look magnificent." "Mr. Beaumont," Anya replied, her voice the same one Vincent remembered, but imbued with a new timbre of confidence. "Thank you. It's for a wonderful cause." It was natural. She moved through the crowd with natural grace, accepting compliments with humility and engaging in conversation with an intelligence that drew people in. She spoke with a curator from the Perez Art Museum about the nuances of post-war expressionism. She discussed philanthropic strategy with the Gala chairwoman, demonstrating an encyclopedic knowledge of the charity's work. Vincent felt a flush of heat rise up his neck. This was the Anya he had deliberately forgotten, the brilliant, perceptive woman who could hold her own in any intellectual circle. He had buried that memory under a narrative that she was simple and uninteresting because it suited him. He wanted a beautiful ornament, not an intellectual equal. Now her brilliance, which he had once found stifling, was on full display, and the world was captivated. "Do something," Serena hissed, digging her nails into his arm. "She's making us look like fools. Go over there. Put her in her place." Vincent knew it was a terrible idea. Confronting her now, while she was the center of this magnetic attraction, would make him look petty and weak. But seeing the mocking smiles on his rivals' faces, the speculative looks from the journalists, the pure, unadulterated awe directed at the woman he had discarded, was intolerable. His ego, the engine of his entire existence, demanded that he reassert his dominance. He straightened his bow tie, put on his predator's smile again, and began to move toward her, Serena trailing behind him like an angry shadow. He would remind her, and everyone else, who she was. She was his ex-wife, a relic, and he was Vincent Sterling, the king of this world. He just had to remind his subjects. The walk toward Anya was like wading through molasses. The air around her seemed thicker, charged with the energy of the crowd's fascination. As Vincent drew closer, conversations muted and glances darted away, sensing the imminent collision. This was the drama they had been craving, the real reason many attended these events, to witness the rise and fall of fortunes, both social and financial. Anya was speaking with Alistair Finch, a notoriously sharp and insightful British investor, known for his Midas touch in the tech sector. Finch, in his late 60s, with a mane of silver hair and eyes that held a lifetime of shrewd calculation, was the big fish of venture capital, and Vincent had been trying to land a meeting with him for 6 months, hoping Finch would invest in his new AI-driven satellite project. His assistant had been repeatedly rebuffed. Yet here was Anya chatting with him like old friends. "The ethical framework is the most crucial component," Anya was saying, her tone earnest and compelling. "Predictive analysis without a strong moral compass is simply a high-tech weapon. The potential for misuse is staggering." Finch nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on her. "A refreshing perspective, Dr. Reed. Most founders I meet talk about disruption and market share. Few mention morality." Before Anya could respond, Vincent interjected himself into the conversation, his smile wide and artificial. "Alistair, I didn't realize you knew my ex-wife." He put a deliberate, condescending emphasis on the word ex. Alistair Finch turned his cold gaze onto Vincent. "I didn't. I am having the pleasure of meeting her now. We were discussing the ethics of artificial intelligence." "Ah, ethics," Vincent said, with a dismissive chuckle, slapping Finch lightly on the shoulder. Anya was always more of a philosopher than a businesswoman, an admirable quality, though not particularly profitable. He looked at Anya, his eyes glinting with malice. "That's quite a spectacular dress, Anya. You must have broken the bank account. I hope you're managing your finances wisely." It was a cheap shot, a public insinuation that she was a foolish spendthrift living off his scraps. The small circle of onlookers held their breath. Anya did not flinch. She simply met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Thank you, Vincent," she said, her voice quiet and even. "It's a Devereaux, a gift from the artist. And as for my finances," she added, a shadow of a smile touching her lips, "you taught me the importance of shrewd investments. I've been applying the lesson." The counterattack was perfect. It was polite, deflected his shot, and contained its own subtle criticism, hinting at a success he knew nothing about. Finch's eyebrow rose in appreciation. Serena, however, lacked any sense of subtlety. Seeing Vincent's attack fail, she stepped forward, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Anya, how lovely to see you out. We were so worried. After the divorce, you just disappeared. It's wonderful that you feel up to all of this." She vaguely gestured at the opulent room. The implication was clear. "You don't belong here." She then zeroed in on the dress. $2 million, they're saying. Honestly, I think it's a bit excessive, don't you? For a charity event, it almost looks like you're trying to make the cause about yourself. Vincent and I believe in discreet, substantive giving. This was a direct attack on Anya's character, painting her as a selfish exhibitionist. Vincent watched, a cruel sense of satisfaction blooming in his chest. This is how you handle her, he thought. Anya turned her full attention to Serena. The shift was subtle, but the temperature around her seemed to drop several degrees. She looked Serena up and down, her gaze lingering for a moment on the flashy yellow diamond necklace. "It's interesting you mentioned substantive donation, Serena," Anya said, her voice still quiet, but now edged with pure steel. "This gala supports pediatric neurological disorder research. It's a deeply personal cause for me. My younger sister, Layla, passed away from an undiagnosed glioma when she was 9. The revelation landed with the force of a physical blow. The manufactured drama of the night suddenly felt cheap and vulgar in the face of such genuine, painful truth." Serena's smug expression faltered, replaced by a flash of panic. She had tried to score a social point and had stumbled into a minefield of real grief. Anya was not finished. "As for the dress," she continued, her voice softening slightly, "Julian Devereaux is an old family friend of my mother's. When he heard I would be attending tonight in Layla's memory, he insisted on creating something special. He called it Layla's Constellation. His gift, he said, was to ensure no one forgot why we are truly here." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "So, no, I don't think it's excessive. I think it's a tribute." She had not only defended herself, but had elevated the dress from a symbol of wealth to a memorial of love and loss. She had seized the moral authority with such natural grace that Serena was left speechless, her face flushed with humiliation. She had been exposed not just as malicious, but as profoundly insensitive. Alistair Finch, who had been watching the entire exchange with the concentration of a chess master, spoke into the silence. "A beautiful tribute, Dr. Reed. Truly." He then turned to Vincent, his expression now decidedly cold. "Sterling, I believe my associate informed your office that my investment portfolio for the second quarter is fully committed. I won't have time for a meeting." Vincent's smile froze on his face. It was a polite, public, and absolutely brutal dismissal. Finch had just slammed the door on a potential $100 million investment in front of half of Miami's financial elite. He hadn't just said no. He had made sure to say it here and now, immediately following Vincent's and Serena's callousness. Vincent felt the floor sink beneath his feet. He had come to reassert his dominance and had instead suffered a devastating public defeat. He looked at Anya, who was now graciously accepting a glass of water from a passing waiter, her composure absolute. There was a dangerous depth to her eyes he had never seen before, or perhaps simply refused to acknowledge. He had believed he had shed his quiet, modest wife. But the woman before him was not a ghost. She was a queen, and with devastating precision, she had just captured his king. The game, he was beginning to realize, had barely begun. Interactive question. Anya revealed a painful truth, her sister's passing, to defend herself against Serena's social attack. Was this a necessary, powerful move, or did it risk cheapening her sister's memory for the sake of public victory? Comment your opinion on the ethics of the Layla Constellation dress, the truth and the empire of integrity. Staggering from Finch's public rebuke, Vincent retreated to the periphery of the ballroom, dragging a furious Serena with him. He needed a drink, something stronger than champagne, and a moment to recalibrate. The carefully constructed narrative of his night, of his life, was fragmenting before his eyes. "This is your fault," Serena hissed, her voice low and trembling with rage. "You were supposed to handle her. You let her walk all over you, all over us." "Shut up," Vincent snapped, his tone dangerously smooth. He signaled a waiter for a neat scotch. "You're the one who brought up the dress. You fell right into her little sob story." "Sob story? She probably made up the whole thing, her sister." Serena trailed off, realizing how monstrous she sounded. The problem was, he knew it was true. In the early days of their affair, Vincent had once mentioned, in a moment of rare introspection, the shadow Anya's sister's death had cast over her family. He had framed it as a source of her melancholic, risk-averse nature. Now, Anya had used that very vulnerability as a weapon, turning it into a shield of unimpeachable moral force. Vincent's mind raced, trying to put the puzzle pieces back together. The dress from a reclusive genius, the impossible composure, the instant connection with a man like Alistair Finch. This was not a woman spending her alimony on a revenge dress. This was a calculated, strategic maneuver, and he had no idea what her objective was. The phrase she had told him echoed in his head. "You taught me the importance of shrewd investments. I've been applying the lesson." What investments? He had made sure the settlement, while large, did not allow her to play in his league. He had arranged for her assets to be mostly tied up in low-yield trusts and bonds, managed by a firm loyal to him. He had designed it to be a comfortable cage, not a launching pad. Had she found a loophole? Meanwhile, across the room, Anya was not reveling in her social victory. She was working. After her conversation with Finch, she had been approached by several other key figures, including the tech editor of the Miami Herald and a prominent bioethicist from the University of Miami. Her conversation was no longer about art or memories. It was about the future. Alistair Finch, having escaped another conversation, returned to her side. "Dr. Reed," he began, his tone now pure business. "Your perspective on ethical AI implementation is not just refreshing, it is vital. You speak with the authority of someone who is not merely an observer. Forgive my directness, but what exactly do you do?" Anya answered his directness with her own. "Mr. Finch, after my divorce, I had two things in abundance: capital, from the sale of a few assets, and time to think. I spent my life surrounded by beautiful things, primarily art, and I watched the art world become increasingly plagued by fakes, uncertain provenance, and a lack of transparency that profits criminals and misleads honest collectors." She paused, taking a sip of water. "My training is in art history, but my passion became technology, specifically how to apply it to solve this problem. Vincent, my ex-husband, always saw my interest in art as a picturesque hobby. He never saw its potential as a dataset." Finch listened intently, his mind clearly whirring. "A dataset?" "The largest, most complex, and valuable dataset in human history," Anya confirmed. "Every brushstroke, every canvas weave, every pigment composition is a unique signature. For the past year, I have been quietly building a company. We have assembled a team of the world's best art historians, material scientists, and, most importantly, machine learning engineers. We have developed a proprietary AI that can analyze a piece of art at a microscopic level and determine its authenticity with a 99.98% accuracy rate, cross-referenced with a blockchain-secured ledger of provenance we are building." She finally named it. "We call it Veritas Art." The name hung in the air between them. Veritas, Latin for truth. It was a brilliant, elegant name for a company designed to bring certainty to a world of smoke and mirrors. Finch's eyes, which had been shrewd, now glowed with the unmistakable spark of discovery. This was what he lived for. Not just another social media app or a marginal improvement in data storage, but a true paradigm shift. A company that could disrupt and dominate a multi-billion-dollar global market. "You've kept it silent," Finch stated, a hint of awe in his voice. "No press, no funding rounds. We've been operating in stealth mode, funded entirely by my own capital," Anya explained. "I didn't want the hype and speculation that comes with VC funding until the technology was perfect. We are finalizing our beta phase now, We have already uncovered 3 masterpieces in private collections that were, in fact, sophisticated fakes, saving our initial clients over $100 million. This was the masterstroke. She was not just a founder with an idea. She was a founder with a proven, working, highly profitable product. She had used her own money, taken her own risks, and built her empire in silence, right under Vincent's nose. The Rothko she had been forced to sell, he suddenly understood. She hadn't sold it for living expenses. She had sold it for seed capital. She had liquidated one masterpiece to build a machine that could verify them all. From his position, Vincent could see the intensity of the conversation between Anya and Finch. He watched Finch nod a slow, deliberate gesture of deep agreement. He watched him hand Anya his private business card, not the one his assistant handed out, but the personal one. It was the venture capital equivalent of a knighthood. "I have a feeling, Dr. Reed," Finch said, his voice low but clear, "that Veritas Art is going to change the world. My fund, Finch Global, doesn't just invest in companies. We invest in visionaries. It would be my honor to be a part of your journey. My team will call yours on Monday. We will make you an offer that reflects the magnitude of what you've built." Vincent felt a wave of nausea. He had been trying to get Finch's money for a speculative satellite project. Anya had just secured it for a fully realized, world-transforming enterprise he didn't even know existed. She hadn't just stolen his spotlight. She had stolen his future. He looked at his ex-wife, truly seeing her for the first time in a decade. The quiet, supportive partner he had called a philosopher had taken her passion, her intelligence, the very qualities he had dismissed, and forged them into a weapon more powerful than any he possessed. He had built an empire of code and contracts. She had built an empire of truth and beauty. And at the largest social event of the year, in front of everyone who mattered, she had just unveiled it. Not with a press release or a flashy presentation, but with a quiet conversation, all while wearing a $2 million gown that was nothing but a beautiful distraction from her true power. Checkmate. The $5 million pledge, the night's main event, the live auction, was meant to be the climax of the gala, an opportunity for the city's wealthiest to publicly display their generosity. For Vincent, it was now a last, desperate defense. He had been socially humiliated and outmaneuvered in business. His only remaining card was raw, overwhelming wealth. He planned to make the largest donation of the night, a spectacular, headline-grabbing figure, to reassert his dominance and reduce Anya's triumph to a footnote. The auctioneer, a charismatic man with a rapid delivery, worked the room, selling off luxury vacations, rare wines, and unique experiences. Vincent sat with Serena at their front row table, brooding. Serena, unusually quiet, was furiously scrolling on her phone, her face tight with anxiety. The whispers about Anya's tribute to her sister had made her a pariah for the moment. Every glance of compassion toward Anya felt like an accusation against her. Finally, the final item of the grand auction was announced. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, for our last lot of the evening," the auctioneer boomed. "A truly invaluable opportunity. A private one-on-one design consultation and dinner with the master himself, the legendary, the reclusive Julian Devereaux." A collective gasp went through the room. Devereaux had not made a public appearance in 2 decades. This was an unprecedented, almost mythical prize. The auctioneer explained that Devereaux, moved by the gala's cause, had agreed to this unique exception, with all proceeds going to charity. Vincent saw his chance. This was it. He would buy access to the man who had, inadvertently, become the symbol of his humiliation. He would own the connection. He would win. "We will begin the bidding at $100,000, the auctioneer declared, and hands immediately shot up. $150,000, $200,000, $2,000. Vincent let the amateurs play. He waited, letting the bidding climb past $500,000. When it stalled at $600,000, he raised his paddle. $1,000, he said, his voice ringing with authority. A silence fell over the room. It was a bold, powerful bid, designed to eliminate all competition. But across the room, a shipping magnate with something to prove raised his paddle. $1.1 million. Vincent responded immediately. $1 million. The room buzzed with excitement. This was the spectacle they had been waiting for. The magnate hesitated, consulted his wife, and reluctantly shook his head. The auctioneer's gavel lifted. $1.5 million. Going once. Going twice. This was his moment of redemption. But before the gavel could fall, the Gala chairwoman, an elegant woman named Beatrice Valdivia, walked onto the stage and held up her hand, speaking quietly to the auctioneer. He nodded, eyes wide, and lowered his gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen," Beatrice said, her voice amplified by the microphone, "we have a brief, wonderful interruption. While the generosity shown tonight has been truly heartwarming, I have just been informed that we received a donation earlier tonight. A donation made privately, without fanfare, even before the gala began." She paused for dramatic effect. Vincent felt a chill of apprehension. "This single donation," Beatrice continued, her voice filled with emotion, "is the largest in the 20-year history of the Zenith Gala. It is enough to fully fund the construction and staffing of a brand new, state-of-the-art neuropediatric research wing at the hospital, to be named in memory of a young woman who lost her battle with cancer far too soon. The Layla Reed Research Pavilion." The name hit Vincent like a physical jolt. Layla Reed. Beatrice smiled warmly. The donor wished to remain anonymous, but in light of her presence here tonight, and with her kind permission, we feel it is only right to recognize her. The $5 million donation was made by the founder of Veritas Art, Dr. Anya Reed. If Anya's entrance had been a shockwave, this was an earthquake. The room erupted not in chatter, but in thunderous, sustained applause. People were on their feet, turning to look at Anya, their faces a mixture of awe and profound respect. His $1.5 million bid was now meaningless, an ostentatious display of ego next to an act of transformative, silent philanthropy. He had tried to buy the spotlight, and she had already bought the entire stage, the building, and the moral soul of the night. Anya, who looked genuinely surprised by the announcement, simply bowed her head, a humble gesture that only amplified her grace. She had donated a fortune in her sister's name and hadn't wanted anyone to know. As Vincent remained paralyzed by this final checkmate, a second, more insidious crisis unfolded at his own table. Serena's face had gone completely white. Her phone was buzzing incessantly. A well-known gossip columnist, a woman Serena had scorned earlier in the night, had just posted a story on her widely read blog. The headline was devastating. "Vargas's Fiancée fairy tale, more fiction than fact." The article, citing multiple sources from her hometown, methodically dismantled Serena's carefully constructed identity. She had not graduated summa cum laude from NYU's Stern School of Business. She had attended community college for 2 semesters. She was never a senior brand strategist at a major marketing firm. She had been an unpaid intern who was fired after 3 months. The story included quotes from former colleagues and even a screenshot of her old, unpolished LinkedIn profile before it was wiped clean and replaced with a fabricated history. The news spread through the ballroom with the speed of a digital virus. On hidden phones beneath the tablecloths, the story was shared, commented on, and dissected. The whispers started again, but this time they were laced with ridicule. "Did you see? The whole resume is fake? But he's a tech genius, and he couldn't even run a background check on his own fiancée. He traded a woman who builds empires for one who builds fairy tales." The facade had not merely cracked, it had shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. Vincent was sitting next to a fraud, a woman whose entire value was based on a lie. His judgment, his intelligence, his own self-perception was now all in question. He had flaunted her as a symbol of his new, upgraded life, and she had just been exposed as a cheap counterfeit. The irony was so thick he could drown in it. He looked across the room at Anya, now surrounded by admirers. Finch, Beaumont, the Gala chairwoman. She was bathed in a glow of authentic respect. Then he looked at Serena, who was staring back at him, eyes wide with terror and supplication. In that moment, Vincent Sterling, the titan of industry, the king of his world, understood the crushing weight of his defeat. He had lost everything that mattered tonight: the deal, the respect of his peers, his public image, and his own self-deception. He had thrown away a diamond and picked up a piece of glittering glass. The coronation, a new author, the applause, a thunderous wave of validation for Anya, finally crested and receded, leaving a silence at Vincent's table that was more damning than any accusation. The air became thick and heavy with the unsaid. Around him, the ballroom was a hive of frantic, hushed communication. Phones glowed beneath tablecloths, their screens displaying the ruinous blog post. Sharp, fleeting glances, like thrown knives, crossed the room toward his table before darting quickly away. They were no longer guests. They were an audience to disgrace. Serena remained motionless, her face a kabuki mask of tragedy, tears having carved pale channels through her expensive foundation. Her phone, lying face up on the table, buzzed with an incessant, vicious rhythm. Each vibration, a new wave of public scorn, another nail in the coffin of her fabricated life. "Vincent," she whispered, her voice hoarse. She reached out a hand to touch his, her touch, tentative, desperate. "I can fix this. I'll issue a statement. We can sue the columnist for defamation. I can explain it all. It just got out of hand. I just wanted to be good enough for you." Vincent looked at her hand on his, then her face. He felt nothing. No pity, no compassion, not even the heat of betrayal. All he felt was a deep, chilling revulsion. She was a defective product, a failed asset. Her lying was not the crime. The crime was her incompetence in maintaining it. She had allowed the impeccable image he had curated for himself to be contaminated by her cheap, clumsy past. He withdrew his hand slowly. "There is no us," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, the finality of it more brutal than any shout. "You are a liability. I do not tolerate liabilities." He stood up, the movement abrupt and decisive. His chair scraped the marble floor, a harsh, ugly sound in the suddenly quiet ballroom. He did not offer her a hand. He did not grant her a backward glance. He simply turned and began his long walk toward the exit, leaving her to be swallowed by the silent judgment of the room. His stride was long and purposeful, his head held high in a defiant imitation of his usual arrogance. But it was a hollow performance. He could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He could sense the mocking smiles and the whispers that followed him. The walk across the ballroom was a gauntlet of his own making. He passed a rival tech CEO, a man he had gloated over just hours before, who now gave him a slow, pitying shake of the head. He saw a circle of society ladies, their faces a mixture of glee and false sympathy. their whispers ceasing the moment he looked their way. This was what failure felt like. Not a sudden crash, but a slow, agonizing corrosion of deference into contempt. He was halfway to the grand staircase, his escape nearly in sight, when a figure moved into his path, blocking him as surely as a brick wall. It was Alistair Finch. The British investor stood with immense stillness, his silver hair catching the light, his eyes holding no warmth, only a clear, penetrating judgment. "Sterling," Finch said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the fog of Vincent's fury and humiliation. "A word of advice, if I may." Vincent bristled, forced to stop. "I am not in the mood for advice, Alistair." "I imagine not," Finch replied, his tone dry as dust. "But you will want to hear this. For years I have watched men like you operate. You worship at the altar of disruption. You measure success in market cap and brute force, but you consistently overlook the most valuable asset of all. It is not capital, not technology, not market share. It is integrity." Finch took a small step closer, his gaze unwavering. "It is the foundation upon which enduring empires are built. It cannot be bought, it cannot be leveraged, and it cannot be acquired in a hostile takeover. It must be earned, and once lost." He paused, letting the weight of the word hang between them. "It is near impossible to recover. You would do well to remember that." Before Vincent could form a retort, Finch executed his last, devastating maneuver. With an abrupt, decisive nod, he turned his back on Vincent and walked straight toward where Anya stood, preparing for her own departure. The move was a physical manifestation of the night's power shift, a literal turn from the dishonored past toward the gleaming future. Vincent remained rooted to the spot, watching as Finch, the man he had courted for months, approached his ex-wife with a reverence he had never been shown. "Dr. Reed," Finch said, his voice now warm with genuine admiration as he took her hand. "An absolute honor. My office will be in touch with yours first thing Monday. I anticipate a very long and very profitable partnership." "Thank you, Alistair," Anya responded, her voice the epitome of grace. "I look forward to it." The sight of it, the handshake, the mutual respect, the closing of a deal that should have been his, was the final breaking point. The carefully controlled dam of his composure burst. He had to understand. He pushed his way past a group of gaping guests, his movements clumsy with desperation, and confronted her at the foot of the stairs. "Anya!" The name was a raw, guttural sound, torn from his throat. She turned to face him fully. She was no longer a ghost of his past, nor a stranger in a beautiful dress. She was an immovable force, her serenity the still eye of the storm that had just wrecked his life. The thousands of tiny diamonds on her Devereux gown seemed to glitter like a triumphant constellation, mocking him with their cold, celestial light. Was all of this for revenge? He demanded, the question bursting from him, a desperate plea for an explanation his ego could process. The company, the dress, Finch, everything. Did you spend a year planning this? This elaborate scheme just to humiliate me? He needed it to be about him. The alternative, that he was merely a footnote in her story, was simply incomprehensible. Anya looked at him, and a deep sadness softened the powerful composure of her features. It was the look of a master watching a pupil fail the simplest, most fundamental lesson. "Oh, Vincent," she said, her voice quiet, imbued not with malice, but with a weary clarity. "You still don't understand, do you? After all of this, you still believe the world revolves around you, that every action is either for or against you." And she took a single deliberate step closer, her presence dominating the space between them. This was never about revenge. It was about resurrection. He watched her take a slow breath, gathering the history of her last year into a single, powerful truth. When you left me, you did more than just end our marriage. You tried to erase me. You took my history. You took my confidence. You took the voice that told me I had value outside of being your wife. You told the world I wasn't enough. And for a long time, in silence, I believed you. I was a ghost in my own life, haunting the rooms you had abandoned. Her gaze was unwavering, forcing him to see the truth he had so long ignored. This past year was not about destroying you. It was about rebuilding myself, from the foundation up. Her voice gained strength, each word a brick carefully laid in her new reality. Veritas Art was born out of my passion for truth and beauty, the very things you always dismissed as a picturesque hobby. The donation was for my sister Layla, a defining part of my soul you never bothered to know. And this dress, she glanced down at the magnificent creation, is not a weapon. It is a gift from a dear friend who saw my strength long before I could see it myself. It is a tribute to the memory of a love that was real and pure. She held his gaze, her final judgment both merciful and absolute. Tonight was not a plot against you, Vincent. It was my announcement to myself, first and foremost, that I am no longer a supporting character in your story. I am the author of mine. She looked past him, at the wreckage he had made of his own life, embodied by the sobbing figure of Serena. You surround yourself with reflections of your own ego, hoping their praise will convince you of your own greatness. But a room of mirrors is still just an empty room. I truly hope, for your sake, that you one day find something real to put in it. With that, she turned. She did not storm off or flee. She simply ascended the grand staircase, her movements paused and regale. The train of Layla's constellation flowed behind her like a river of starlight, a breathtaking sight. The entire ballroom watched in silence, a collective, unspoken acknowledgement that they were witnessing not an ending, but a coronation. She never looked back. Vincent Sterling was left alone, a statue in the middle of the ballroom. The buzz of the crowd slowly returned, but it sounded distant and distorted, the noise of a world he no longer entirely belonged to. He was a king in a fallen kingdom, left alone with the bitter ashes of his pride, haunted by the devastating clarity of her final words. Anya pushed through the heavy doors and stepped out into the cool, crisp embrace of the Miami night. The air was clean, a welcome antidote to the cloying atmosphere of the gala. The city skyline sparkled ahead of her, a familiar panorama that suddenly felt new, a landscape of infinite possibilities. She took a slow, trembling breath, a lungful of pure, unadulterated freedom. The weight of the past, the pain, the betrayal, the crushing inadequacy had finally lifted. The magnificent dress, which had served as her armor for the battle, now felt light, like a second skin. Its purpose had been fulfilled. Her work was just beginning. Veritas Art needed her. The Layla Reed Research Pavilion needed to be built. She smiled, a genuine, private smile. She had walked into the fire of her past and emerged not burned, but forged. Her new dawn was here, and it was brighter than all the city lights combined. And so the Zenith Gala ended, not with a bang, but with the quiet, transcendental triumph of a woman who refused to be forgotten. Dr. Anya Reed walked into that ballroom as an ex-wife and walked out as a legend. Final call to action. This was not just a story about a revenge dress. It was a story about reclaiming one's narrative. It is a testament to the fact that true power is not about the noise you make or the money you flash. but about the silent, unbreakable strength you build when no one is watching. It's about turning your deepest pains into your greatest passions and realizing that your worth is never, ever determined by the person who leaves you. What did you think of Anya's incredible transformation? Were you rooting for her every step of the way? Let us know in the comments below. If you love stories of empowerment and sweet victory, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable tales.